Hey everybody, I want to welcome you back. We are here with the Leasing for Landlords portion of the Landlord Launch course, and today we're going to be talking about really just the actual process of leasing, the property tours, taking traffic, recording traffic, and some of the tools along those things, and just walking through the tour itself and some different ways to approach that. We have our marketing all set up. We have, we're getting some calls. We're now setting up some tours. Now we're going to record that so we can analyze the traffic if necessary, and then move our way into receiving that rental application and then into the screening process. So this should be just a one module course here on the leasing, because again, we're going to be covering traffic and property tours on this particular section. So let's jump right in and see what the day has in store for us. Okay, so what we're going to be covering in this section, we are going to cover how to field an inquiry for your listing. This is recording all that traffic that's coming in, how to capture and document the prospect information, the different types of property tours, how to conduct them, and then we're going to take a look at the rental application packet, what I include in mine, and maybe what you want to include in yours, and maybe some different ideas along those lines. There are certainly a lot of different approaches to this, so I'm just going to show you how I do mine, and you can take what you want, leave the rest, and add in what you think is useful for you. Okay, so why is the traffic and the property tour itself important? So the traffic is really kind of the result of all of our marketing efforts. Everything that we've done on the property marketing side, the headline, the work we put in on the property description, the pictures we've taken, if we're using floor plans, the video tours, everywhere that we've listed that unit, the traffic is the result of getting that all set and prepped. And now, if everything is working correctly, we should be getting inquiries. Now, this is kind of the beginning of our lease retention or our retention process as well, because the way we respond to traffic, the way we conduct ourselves, the way we hold ourselves, our professionalism, our appearance, every way that we treat this prospect, they're going to remember. People remember the way you make them feel. And I always say be professional no matter what, even when things get a little rough, because there may be a point where that turns around and you want to keep this tenant in your home for whatever reasons. And it's much better to have the option to say, I'm not interested in keeping you anymore, than want to keep them and them be upset with you for something that happened 6, 8, 9, 12 months ago, and they just decide to move. So I always say be professional. Always think about retention, and this is really kind of the first step, the way that we deal with our traffic and the way that we talk to folks. Now there are a couple different ways that we can set up and do property tours. I would recommend that you start out with the one that we're going to be talking about, with the traditional, but if you feel you want to try some other things out, especially when it comes to like out of town, leasing and things, or leasing for people that are moving in from out of town, we're going to explore some of those alternative options. But try them all out, see what works best for you. Take what I've given you here and turn it into your own variations. These are just some ways that I've seen it done it myself. I'm sure there's other things out there that we're not going to talk about today, but these are the standards. Okay, so let's move on, because we talked about the relationship already. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be dealing with is the inquiry, and this is it can come in a lot of different ways: a call, an email, a message, things along those. But the goal here, really, from the point of the inquiry, is to do a little pre-screening. And you'll see we're going to use a tool called the traffic log, and you'll see on there it's kind of set up to do some of that pre-screening. But we don't necessarily want to run them off. We don't want to go so deep into our questioning that it turns into an interrogation. We want to make sure they meet the basic qualifications, but the goal here is to schedule property tours, get them on the property, get them into the unit, and start that process. So again, we want to leave a good first impression on that prospect. We want to treat them with respect. We want to be professional. We want to be friendly. We want to have some energy. We want to get them excited about the idea of living in the home and what we have to offer. Another goal at the inquiry stage is to capture and document that prospect information. One, to see how our marketing is working, seeing how they heard about us, and then two, it also serves as a good way to document for fair housing purposes, showing that we kind of run and treat everybody the same. Again, that's going to be on the traffic log. We'll get into that here in just a minute, but a lot of that happens at the inquiry stage. And like we were talking about, there can be a little pre-screening, but we don't want to scare people off. We definitely don't want people that, you know, are like, if they're in a bankruptcy, this is where a little pre-screening, if they're in a current bankruptcy, you know, we would be wasting their time, assuming that you don't accept bankruptcies. So there is a little bit of pre-screening in this, and we have that built in that we want to do here. Okay, so again, these are going to come in the form of a call. It could be an email, it can be a Facebook message, you know, maybe it's going to be the Instagram message, whatever it is. It's that inquiry is them reaching out to you in some way or another, saying, hey, I'm interested in this home. Can you give me some more information? Can we set up a tour? Something along those lines. If they reach out, I personally, on messaging, Facebook messages, and email, things along those lines, I personally like to get on the phone with them. So I'll shoot a message back. Yeah, I got some great information for you. You know, what's a good time to give you a call? Shoot me your number. I'll give you a ring real quick. Because then that gives me the opportunity to, one, capture their phone number. And then if it's an email, of course, you have their email address. But it gets me on the phone with them and allows me to kind of go through my pre-screening process, talk with them for a few minutes, and then I'll record that on the traffic log, of course, as well. Speed of your response is important. If whenever possible, get back to them as soon as you can. If you wait 2, 3, 4 days, you're going to show that, well, that's how important it is to you. I mean, if you wait 3, 4, 5 days to respond, then, you know, they're looking for a home now. And the people that call them back, the people that talk to them, to start that relationship with them, they're more likely to go with them than they would be with you, even if you have a better product. If you take your sweet time getting back with them, 2, 3, 4, 5 days later, that in itself is going to spook them, because if that's the way you're responding to someone living in your home, how are you going to respond to maintenance? How are you going to respond to issues? Are you going to care? Is everything going to be delayed? That's, once again, how we do this stuff is how they're going to think about a relationship. So again, dress for success, speed of response, call them back, get with them, be urgent, be happy, be excited. That's where that kind of tone of that communication comes in as well. Be excited to talk to them. I mean, this is a potential applicant. This is somebody that is going to be paying you rent for the next 12 months, taking care of your home. That's great. That's exciting stuff. Be professional with them and be excited, and you want them to be excited about getting into your home. So that whole tone of that communication and conversation is extremely important. I think that all of that kind of ties in too, is that renters are looking for a good landlord, just like landlords are looking for good renters. There's a lot of landlords out there that give renters a really hard time. In a lot of cases, unnecessarily. Not all renters are bad. Not all landlords are good. And I've definitely had bad experiences with landlords for whatever reasons. It happens. And so they are screening us just as much as we're screening them, and the way that we communicate with them, respond to them, talk to them, treat them, all those things, that's going to play into their decision. It doesn't matter how good the property is and how good the rent is. If they think that you are a person they can't deal with, they're not going to deal with you, especially if they've already had a bad experience with a landlord in the past. Again, it's about retention, the possibility of retention. Okay, so onto that traffic log. Now, the traffic log is basically just a record that helps us keep track of everybody that's calling, when they called, and do a little pre-screening and capture some basic information about that prospect. It does help us with stay out of fair housing problems, just because any documentation, and that's assuming you're being consistent with your communication back, you're calling everybody back, you're treating everybody the way that you're supposed to be treating them. If you are not, if you're picking and choosing and you hear somebody with an accent, you decide you don't want to talk to them because you don't want anybody with that accent living there, that's not a good thing. You shouldn't be doing that, and maybe you should rethink whether or not you want to be a landlord, because that's just not going to last very long. That type of scenario, if that's the way you're approaching people, it's going to catch up with you sooner than later, and it's going to cost you a lot of money, and you may just be in the wrong business if that's the way you're looking at this stuff. But having said that, assuming that since most of you are here watching this, listening to me talk, going through this course, I'm assuming that most of you are wanting to learn how to do things in the way that is professional, way that they should be done for this industry. So I'm going to assume that this isn't any of you. So a traffic log is going to be a good tool for you, because it will allow you to kind of document those calls that are coming in. And it's not just for fair housing, it's not just for pre-screening, but it's also to see where it's coming from in the marketing. Let's just say that you go through a few rounds and you spend, we talked about Craigslist last time, and how that can be a hit or miss. So let's say that you over the course of 2 or 3 cycles of you renting this property, you don't get a single inquiry on Craigslist, or every inquiry that you get from Craigslist is, I don't know, bankruptcy, or it doesn't meet your criminal criteria, whatever the case may be. It may not for you in your area, it just may not be a good source of traffic. So that traffic log is going to actually put some data in front of you to where you can make those types of decisions. The traffic log itself is just recording information. I like a paper version of it. You'll see a copy here in a minute, but I literally just fold that thing up, stick it under my phone, and or somewhere where I'm going to be at, and then when a call comes in, or I'm returning a call off of an email or a messenger message, I'll pull it out and I'll start documenting information on it. And you can do that digitally too. If you work better with Excel or something on the PC, that's fine. If you have some sort of app on the phone you want to use the phone. But whatever it is, have a log of the traffic coming in so you can capture the information that you need to capture. So here's an actual copy of a sample traffic log, and again, we'll have this in a resource section. We have this in the Forms Vault. It's a Word doc. You can change this any way that you want to. If there's a piece of information that you want to track, if you want to make this more complicated, less complicated, download it, edit it, make it your own, and start using it. If you want it in a digital format, well, pop it on Excel real quick. You can copy and paste one row here, and then the rest is easy. But for demonstration purposes, this is the basic setup: the date and time of the person called or inquired, what their name is, what property, if you have multiple properties. If not, maybe this is a note section. I don't know. What kind of rent range are they looking for? Because if they, for some reason, let's just say they do a drive-by and they call because they've seen the sign and they're like, well, my budget's only $600 a month and your rental's $1,500 a month. Sorry, this one's probably out of your range. That's one of those pre-screening questions. It allows you to get information and give them information, so you don't waste any time going to a property and showing them a property that they wouldn't even qualify or want in the first place. How many beds and baths are they looking for? The media source. What's the advertising? Where did they hear about you? If they say online, oh, okay, great. Was that over at Facebook Marketplace, or was that over at Turbo Tenant? Whatever that is, dig a little deeper. Don't let them just say, well, I saw you online, or whatever. If you need the information, get the information. You want to know where they heard about you so that you can track this stuff. If you can, capture their email and phone for obvious reasons to follow up with them. And because, they may not be at first glance interested, and then if you have it rented in a day or two, you can call back and say, hey, I just wanted to follow up on our call and see if you want to get over there and take a look at this property. I'm available this afternoon at 2 o'clock. Is that a good time for you, or whatever the case may be. It's a good way to follow up. And then I have some of those other pre-screening questions over there. Do they have pets? Section 8, evictions, convictions, criminal convictions, felony convictions, bankruptcy. Are they currently in bankruptcy? And this is just an example of what, it allows me to remember to ask the same questions of everybody. Again, consistency in the way that you operate. This is just basically a process. You're lining out a process in a form which is functional and allows you to use it in an action-based type of manner, while keeping you following your process and being consistent and having documentation. Again, setting up our foundations like we talked about in the fair housing module. Okay, so once we have a property tour scheduled, we've taken the call, we've kind of pre-screened them, they're interested, they like what we have to hear, we're going to set up a property tour. I always like to set it up on a calendar, maybe do an invite to them, and then the day of, maybe a couple hours ahead of time, give them a confirmation call or an email, say, hey, just wanted to confirm that we're still on for 2 o'clock today. Yep, see you there. Okay, great. This is going to reduce instances of no-shows, because sometimes they just forget. But onto the property tour. So the objective of the property tour is to obtain a rental application from a qualified applicant tenant. And that's it. It's real simple. We want an application at this stage. We want an application that we can possibly approve and move in. So as we do this on the property tour, there's a few different ways, and we talked about earlier different types of property tours. And the ones that we're going to kind of look at are just like your traditional property tour, the a virtual property tour, the self-entry property tour, and then we're also going to talk about what open houses look like for rental properties. They can be a mixed bag. Very doable, just kind of a mixed bag. There's a few extra layers of liability there we got to watch out for. Okay, the traditional property tour. So this is where you go to the home and you meet the prospect at the home and you do the property tour. Again, like we said, confirm that appointment a couple hours ahead of time. That really decreases the no-shows. I always like to show up early and prep the home. I like to go in, I like to open up the blinds. I like to make sure there's no surprises, make sure there's no weird smells, turn on some lights, open up the doors, get some fresh air in there, and just put the toilet seats down. Just get everything prepped. If there's any bugs laying around, from a vacant home, because that happens, cleaning those up. I recommend doing what the apartment communities do, and that is keeping a sparkle bucket with you, put it in your trunk, or leave it at the property somewhere in one of the closets, just in case you have to do a quick cleanup before they get there. You have everything that you need to do that. And then make sure you're prepared with your application packet, which includes the property flyer and the one that I put together at least, so that you have something to give them if they do want to apply, or at the very least, information to send them home with to continue considering your property if they're not ready to make a decision at that point in time. So when you're there, you are going to want to hang out and look out for them. And when they pull up, if you're inside or outside, make sure to greet the prospect, greet them with a smile, handshake, meet them kind of out the car. Don't jump on top of them, but be there, be ready, be prepared for them. Again, make sure that you dress professionally, and I'm not talking about putting a suit and tie or anything, but a nice pair of jeans and a polo or something that's nice and professional. If you go get up there and your shirt's covered in paint and your jeans are all raggedy and your hair's all out of whack, and and you look like you just came off a hard night of drinking, Once again, tenants are screening you as well. They want a good landlord, and those are all going to be red flags for them. You just want to eliminate that as a potential doubt in their mind. So dress professionally, because the way that you treat them is going to be the way that you expect them to treat you. And if you don't care, they're not going to care, or at least you're going to attract the type of tenant that doesn't care. So please keep that in mind. It does make a difference. At this stage, you're really kind of building rapport. You've done some pre-screening already on the inquiry. You don't want to go a full-blown interrogation. Any questions you do ask in terms of digging in a little deeper on the pre-screening, you can do one if they're interested and you have the rental application, because you're going to give them a copy of your screening criteria. But don't get into a full-blown interrogation. You're there to show them the property and to convince them that this is the right property for them. You're already there, so do that, and then let the screening process, weed out the rest of the stuff. If you try to do screening while you're sitting there trying to build a relationship, those are two conflicting goals, and it can cause some damage, and you can run off potentially qualified applicants before you even have a chance to really find out if they are qualified, because most people don't like being interrogated. Now you're going to want to take the lead of the tour. And what I mean by this is kind of have like a tour path. And what I like to do is, depending on how the setup of the property is, just come on in, let me show you around. Okay, this is the living room. This is roughly 15 by 15. We got this nice fireplace over here. We have cable installed right above there if you want to have the TV hung above the fireplace, or there's another cable jack over here, really outlining the features of the room and the property. Take them then through the kitchen if that's what's next, but a guided tour. And throughout that time, you can ask some of your questions in terms of, so what do you do for a living? Kind of some of those little, again, not a full-blown screening question, but you can work some of this stuff into the conversation, but make it a conversation. It's about building the relationship, building the rapport, and highlight all the positive features. Downplay, I wouldn't point out negative features or things that you perceive as negative features, because they may not even care. And then if you turn around and say, yeah, but I know the color of this carpet's horrible, they may not have even thought about it or cared or wouldn't have even thought about it. But then if you bring it up and they're like, yeah, that is ugly. Now you're just giving them obstacles that you wouldn't have had to deal with in the first place. So highlight those positives and don't worry about the negative stuff. Let them come up with their objections and give you the list of stuff that you overcome. Don't give them objections that you have to overcome. And again, in this conversation, find out about their needs, because what we're really trying to do is place them in the home. So, so let's just say you're in a bedroom, there's a walk-in closet, and, hey, this bedroom, it's 12 by 15, fits most king size. You guys have a king size bed? Yeah, good size dresser too? Well, that's good, because this room is plenty big enough for you guys to be able to fit that furniture in here. Plus we have the walk-in closet as well, which holds plenty of clothes. Do you have a lot of shoes? I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but the point being is that ask them questions about their needs and then fit their needs into the property as you are having a normal conversation with them. Demonstrate how your property meets their needs is what you're really trying to do here. Place them in the home. Place their furniture in the home. I always know that there's a good chance I'm getting an application when I can start them talking about how their furniture is going to fit in a room. So I always try to stimulate those conversations one way or another. And a lot of times I'll just step back, once it gets started, I'll just step back and let them, have the conversation. If it's a 10-minute conversation of that couple or whoever else placing their furniture and debating about, this would look better here, this would look better there, I'm not going to interrupt that flow. That's them. They're placing themselves in the home for me. They're doing my job for me. So I definitely like to try to get those conversations started. Oh, there it is. Place a prospect in the home. Get them to imagine living there, place their furniture. Now, once the tour is kind of complete and you showed them everything and they've talked about how their stuff's going to fit in there, I like to kind of recap the tour, and sometimes I'll take notes as I go, but recap the tour and really kind of emphasize how the property meets the needs and place a prospect in the home once again. Just like I said before, get them imagine living there. It's kind of you're doing it over again, and you're reminding them why this property is a good fit for them before you ask for the sale, for lack of a better word. So it's like, hey, well, so, this is available on this date. It sounds like this would be a really good fit for you. You like the school district is a good fit. You're right by the highway, put you closer to work. It sounds like your furniture is going to be great in the living room. I really like your idea with what you're going to do with that television. As far as I can tell, I think this is a really good match for you. What are your thoughts about getting an application in today? And let's get started on this. It's recapping that tour and setting up for you to ask for the sale in some manner or another. And again, if you need to take notes, take notes. Once you've done this a few times, it gets to be kind of second nature though. There we go, ask for the sale. And here's some examples that I kind of wrote down. I kind of led into it with that last example, but it's similar. Based on your conversations, it sounds like this property would be a really good fit for you and your family. I'd love to see you put an application in and actually have a great offer going on today. Hey, remember the move-in specials? Remember that creating that urgency? Hey, everything here, this sounds like this is the place for you. I know you probably have other places to look at, but I have something going on today that I think will seal this deal. I'm offering $500 off the first month's rent for applications, but you have to put an application in today. Application fee is only $60 per adult. Are you ready to get started? I'd love to be able to give you that special. That asking for the sale and then using that move-in special to create that urgency to get the application going for that day. Well, there it is again. I'm getting ahead of myself. I have these on the links. That's good though. So let's go back. Let me just kind of cap that off. So yeah, again, keep in mind the whole point of this is to capture the application. And again, you don't have to be a master salesperson, but you do want to ask for the sale. And asking for the sale is not this complicated thing. It's as simple as saying, I would love for you to be my tenant. Can you put an application in today? I would like to get this off the market, and this is a good fit for you. Something that's just asking them, saying, I want you here, because people like to be wanted. That makes them feel good. And if you have this whole list of reasons why this is going to be a good fit for them, what's the holdup? We should do this now. I want to get this off. You're the right person for this, and I want you to apply. I want you to be in my home. And then from there, if there's any objections, we can try to overcome those objections. Whatever it is. Well, I have 3 cars. I know it's a 2-car garage. Yeah, but off the alley, we have an extra little spot, next to the 2-car garage there where you can put your 3rd car or your boat. So that would probably take care of that for you. Is that something that would solve that issue for you? Well, yeah, probably would. Whatever that may be, that gives them the opportunity to tell you the 2 or 3 things that's kind of holding them up. But once you overcome those, once you come up with creative solutions to solve those objections for them, it's go time. Ask for the application, get that in there, and get moved on to the screening process. So again, the more of these you do, the more natural this will become. And really, more than anything, it's just about, this is where the rapport comes in. It's not about memorizing closing scripts or anything else. I'm not there like pre-memorizing anything. Generally speaking, I know that I'm trying to place them in the home, and generally speaking, I know that I am going to ask for that sale in some way or another. But everything else is just about building the relationship and being able to have a good conversation with them, to where if your rapport is going good and you guys are getting along and you're going back and forth and it's flowing, asking for the sale is easy. Now, if the whole thing is no, my furniture's too big. No, I don't like this carpet. No, it's not close enough to work. No, it's not this. No, it's not that. It's almost at that point, if nothing works for them, I kind of don't want them as a tenant anyway, because they're not going to be happy there. And if they're not going to be happy there, they're going to cause a lot of trouble along the way. And it's almost like, well, I'd love for you to be a renter here, but it doesn't sound like we're going to be a good fit. No, we're not going to be a good fit. Okay, well, I really appreciate you coming over today. If you know of anybody that would possibly be interested, I'd love to show them the property, send them my way. I'd really appreciate it. We offer a $200 referral fee. I'd love to give you some money. Something along those lines. But don't try to close a tenant that's not going to be happy there anyway, because they're just going to cause you issues. This real quick is just kind of a sample sparkle bucket. I don't remember if I have a little cheat sheet for this or not, or just a list. I don't know. If I do, it'll be listed in the resource section, but if not, you can come back to this slide. It's nothing complicated. It's just something you never know what's going to happen. I mean, I had a house one time that if it was, if I wasn't in there during certain seasons, somehow or another crickets would get in there and it'd be a pile of dead crickets somewhere. Or maybe there's water that was kind of left sitting there and it left a little kind of water stain in the sink of some sort. So you never know what you're going to deal with. Sometimes an issue actually happened that you have to clean up real quick, and you need to go back and solve whatever that was, a little hot water leak or whatever else. But at least if you have something here that you can mop that up, clean that up real quick, and then you can come back after the tour and do what you got to do to make sure that doesn't happen again. But this is just a list of what a regular sparkle bucket looks like, that you could, again, keep in your trunk, keep at the property itself, and be prepared for anything that pops up for you. Okay, so moving on to the virtual property tour. The virtual property tour is really just a video tour of the property, and you can do this pre-recorded, or you can do this live using kind of like a FaceTime or some sort of video call type deal. I don't know. I've personally never done a live tour myself. I have absolutely done video tours, and I've even done customized video tours too, to where I will go in and walk it, and you don't want to be bouncing around everywhere, but walking it and showing them around and using their name, building that rapport. Hey Mike, here we go, over here is the fireplace, we got this cable outlet over here, this is what our tenants normally do, and then down here, and if I remember right, you said you're going to be working over here, we're close to the highway, Mike, that's a 15-minute drive, that's going to save you a lot of time from what I remember our conversation at your your current commute of an hour. Okay, over here in the bedroom, we got the 12, just making it more personalized. That's one way to do it. That way, you can send that to them, and they can take their time, and they can go through and they can look at things, and they can fast forward, and they can rewind, they can look at it over and over again, as opposed to you walking through and it's a one-time shot, and if they miss something or have questions, or maybe the place meets their needs, but just because there was so much going on, they didn't see it in that first pass. So that's why I personally like kind of more the video tours and creating a link and sharing it with them. Now you can also do like more of like a generic video tour and then do a voiceover. That's a potential. Or you can just do a generic video tour and talk about all those things and not make it customized to the person you're talking to. Just have the link, and then or send it in your marketing and so forth as well. But the point is the virtual tours, they're really kind of designed for the people that cannot be live in person with you. They're moving in from out of town, something along those lines, or if they're linked to your marketing people to get a better feel of the property before they schedule a tour to come over and see it for themselves. But there are a lot of people these days, and I see this a lot in the greater Phoenix area, because a lot of people are commuting in or have been over the last couple years, and they have to rent sight unseen. So by giving them pictures and descriptions and the property tours and everything else, it helps both of you, because it really clears up a lot of what is actually there. And it's never going to be 100% what they expected, but the more you can eliminate in terms of surprises, the better off you both are going to be. You want them happy, you don't want them regretting their decision, and sight unseen leases can get complicated. Let's see here. And then from there, you're going to want to make sure to document that tour occurred. You can use the traffic log on here too. You can have a column on there that said date and time of the tour, or you can just put it in a note, showed showed on such and such at such and such time, because again, it establishes that timeline. So if anyone were ever to come back fair housing wise and say, well, I looked at this property and they didn't like me because of this protected class, but this person over here, not protected class, they rented to them and they should have rented to me. Well, actually, that's not the case. We showed you first, yes. We showed them 2 days later. They put their application in that day. You did not. That's why we rented to them. It wasn't because of a protected class. So it allows you to establish, and here's my documentation of all that. So it allows you to establish those timelines and kind of keep yourself out of that trouble. Again, building the foundation within our processes. And it happens. That stuff happens. And again, as a single family landlord, property owner, I understand you're probably not going to be exposed to that near as often as I have been in the property, as a property management company owner and working with apartment communities. But it does happen, and I am starting to see a shift, especially with the tenant advocacy groups, to where they are starting to look at and do testers and stuff on these individual landlords, because generally speaking, they're not as sophisticated in terms of having their processes lined out as, say, a management company who has to deal with this all the time and is really up to speed on these things. They are doing the training. They are familiar with this stuff. They do know what to look for. They do know how to sidestep these things. The typical property owner, they're just looking to rent their home and hope it's a good tenant, and they want that rent to come in so they can pay their mortgage and move on. They're not thinking about all these things, and I don't want you to have to think about all these things. If we build those into your processes, you're not going to have to worry about it. It's just going to happen naturally. That's why I keep going back to fair housing type stuff. Let's see here. The open house tour. So I like open house tours. I think you can get a lot of people in there very quickly. The part where it becomes complicated is, a couple places. One, making sure that you have the right things in place to establish kind of the order of people's applications that may come in. That's one thing, because the last thing you want to do is, if you have an open house for 3 hours and you get 10 applications, what you do not want to do is set all 10 applications down in front of you and decide which one you want to screen. That is a hotbed of exposure for potential discrimination claims. You want to establish some sort of criteria that says, okay, whoever gives me A, B, and C is the person I'm going to screen first. A, B, and C, second, third, fourth. So that's one of the complications. That's doable, though. I mean, you can do a log just like the real estate agents do of, who's coming in and give them, make sure they get the right packet and outline on that screening criteria, which we'll go over actually in the next module, the application screening side of it, outlining what it takes for you to actually screen an application. But where I think it becomes more complicated and where I want you to be careful of is if you do when you're doing pre-leasing. So if the home is occupied, I think open houses are a bad idea. So let's just say that somebody gives notice and you want to pre-lease the home, and you say, okay, I'm going to run an open house between 10 and 12 on Saturday. Can you guys leave? Okay, first off, they're not going to like that at all, but let's say they do that. And then let's say that you have 50 people. We'll get really extreme. You have 50 people show up, and now you have 50 different families walking around this person's home, and you have no ability to monitor all those people, make sure they're not getting into this other person's personal property. I mean, you don't know these people. If something ends up getting stolen, it's going to be on you. If that tenant claims that something got stolen, even if it wasn't, you have no way to prove that it wasn't, no way to, figure out even who was there at that point in time. So I like the open house on vacant properties. If you are going to pre-lease an occupied property and you want to try to use the open house tour, there's a hybrid. Let me see if I actually address that here. Yeah, it's a modified. I'll touch on how to do that in a minute. I call it the modified open house here. But let's just get back to the slide here. Again, yeah, block out a few hours on the weekend, market your house on the the internet listing sites, social media, yard signs, newspapers, open house on such and such a date. And if you are using the MLS or in some of these internet sites, they actually have like open house type sections that you can advertise in. Excuse me. Create a sign-in sheet. That's what I was talking about. It's basically just a traffic log, capturing that information, get them to sign in. That way you have a record of who is actually there at the property in case, for whatever reasons, for follow-up purposes, and in case anything ends up happening to the property, you'll have a record of everybody is there. If you're going to do the open house, have refreshments available, make it, be there greeting them, smiling. Open house is a little tough on the rapport side of things, but, make them comfortable, make them feel welcome. Make sure that you have your rental application packets put together. We're going to talk about the application packet and everything that I put in mine, but have plenty of them available. That way, as they come in, hey, thank you for coming to visit. My name's such and such. Do me a favor real quick, sign in over here. I'm going to give you this rental application packet, which has our screening criteria and a property flyer. If you have any questions, please let me know. Whatever that looks like for you, especially if there's multiple people there, you're going to want to stay at a point where you can greet new people coming in while the other folks are taking a look around. And again, it's a great way to get a lot of traffic in a very short period of time, and it keeps you from driving back and forth on these one shots. There's definitely pros and cons to the open house. I like the open house, just got to be careful with open houses on occupieds. Like I was saying before, it is difficult to build the same type of rapport with multiple visitors that you would be able to on a one-on-one visit. You are definitely able to talk to them and answer questions, but it's just you can't give them the guided tour. You can't really walk around. You can't really get to know them or ask them those pre-screening type questions. You can't place them in the home. You can't start those conversations, to get them to start placing their own furniture in the home. All those little tactics I like to use on a property tour. If you stand there for 2 hours and nobody shows up, that can be very frustrating. As opposed to a regular traditional property tour, you have an appointment, you've confirmed it, and 9 times out of 10 they should show up. So that can be frustrating if nobody pops in, because depending on where you're at, open house for rentals may not be all that common, so people may not be looking for them. It may be hard to generate some of that traffic. Again, the house has got to be vacant. Don't do this with a house that's occupied. It will bite you. It will bite you. Something's going to happen. Even if nothing happens, there's a good chance the resident is going to think something happened, and they're going to misplace something, or they forgot where they placed something and they're going to think it got stolen because you just had 40 people in their house. It's just not a good scenario. And then, of course, one of the cons as well is it's tough to actually capture and make sure you got the information that you need and start those conversations you want when you have 10 people roaming around the house and you're still have to stand up front greeting folks as they come in and go out. So on those, if you like the open house idea and but you don't want to waste your time and you want to make sure in your pre-leasing, there's kind of a middle ground approach, and I just call it the modified open house. But really all it is you're advertising an open house by appointment only, and you're saying I'm going to be at this property on Saturday between 10 and 12, 10 and 1. If you would like to see it, I'm blocking out 15-minute personalized tours, and you can get in, you can see it. You just give me a call and we'll schedule a time and go from there. So the advantage of this is that one, you're trying to capture a lot of the same type of funneled traffic that you would with an open house, but you're not going to be left if nobody schedules an appointment. Okay, you close it down. You don't even have to show up. The second component of that, if it's an occupied home, you can be there with that tour and be with them every step of the way to make sure that nothing happens to the personal property of the existing tenant. Also, it's a lot more convenient for the existing tenant to leave 3 hours on a Saturday than it is to get 15 different calls over the course of 3 weeks saying, hey, I need to show your home here. I'm going to give you a 24-hour notice. I'm going to give you 48-hour notice here. I'm going to give you 48-hour notice here. That is aggravating because a lot of times, they're trying to live their life. They're trying to move, and now they feel like they have to have things cleaned up all the time, and it becomes a real distraction in their life. So it's actually a pretty decent approach when it comes to pre-leasing a home if you can get it done right. Same type of deal though, market the open house in your ILS, social media, yard signs. If you've had people call on your traffic log about it in the past that you didn't get an appointment scheduled, call them back. Hey, listen, I'm running an open house on Saturday between 12 and 1. I unfortunately have to do it by appointment so I can spend a little time with you and make sure I can answer all your questions in 15-minute blocks. But hey, I got a time at 12:15. Does that work for you? So use your old traffic log and try to get those people back in. And then again, it's a good way to funnel a lot of people in a very short period of time and get that thing leased before it's even vacated, which is awesome. That's the best way to do it. That really reduces your vacancy loss. Saves your travel time, one-on-one interaction with the prospect, and then you can do this with an occupied home. So we talked about all that, so we'll skip right through this slide and head to the next one. Okay, the self-entry tour. So I've used self-entry tours. I like self-entry tours. I've been on the other end of self-entry tours. I've actually taken self-entry tours just because I was curious about the home. I wasn't actually even leasing, but I was curious about the home. I wanted to see what the condition was. It was kind of almost like a market survey in a couple cases. But basically how this works is that the landlord works with a company. There's different companies out there. I think Showmajo is one of them. Rentley is one of them. Things along those lines, where it's basically a digital lockbox. And on the sign, your rental sign, and on the web and everything else, it's a self-tour at your own convenience, or whatever the verbiage is. And they get on their app, and they either have an account already or they set up an app. And if they have an account, like with a Rentley, for example, you'll have a rental listing on there. So somebody that likes Rentley, they can get on there and see, oh, these are all the properties available in my neighborhood. Is there anything that fits my needs? But if they have an account, they have to have a credit card on there, and they basically go on their app and they schedule a tour they want to go show. And then, like 5 or 10 minutes before, or maybe when they show up, they let them know that and they get a code. And then that code goes to the box, opens up, they get to go in, and they get to look at the home on their own. And then when they're done, they put the key back in the box. Box is locked, and that box has sensors indicating key is in and out and all that good stuff. The technology is pretty awesome, actually. And then it saves you the time from going over them, meeting them. They can go look at their own accord. They can have the conversations they want to. Again, the other side of that, and maybe there's I'll have to check to see. Well, let's just look here. Maybe talk about it a little bit. The other side of that is that you don't get to have that same rapport building and everything else. But, there are some advantages to it. Some people, they just like to go in and make their own decisions. They don't like to be disturbed. Some people really like this. Now, you would think that... let's just go down here. Okay, so again... The first and foremost obvious concern that I originally had as a landlord, as a property management company, is potential damage and theft of the property. Now, what we ended up doing on the property management side of things is we selected certain houses. We didn't, in our rougher neighborhoods, I didn't do stuff like this, because, to me, it felt like there would be more of a potential for that happening. Nicer homes, nicer neighborhoods, things along those lines I did. And I never actually had any issue with this. Never had any damage, never had any theft, never had anything. I actually haven't heard of anybody having any damage or theft. I can almost guarantee it's happened, but I think that if you're smart about the way you set this up in the first place and make sure that your property is a good candidate for this type of program, then you really reduce that risk a lot. Because just the simple fact of there being damage or the credit card's on file and they have an account set up and you know who they are, if that next person goes in and there's damage, they're going to immediately stop and they're going to call and they're going to say, I just walked in and there's water all over the floor, there's a big hole and windows are broken. I did not do this. Well, you know who the last person was because they were the last person in there. So, I think that's what people think about, what's in their head when they set these accounts up. I certainly did. So I never had any problems with it, but I do think you have to strategically decide whether or not it's a good fit for your property. Let's see here. Again, you can't build rapport with the renter. That's tough. You can't sell them. You can't ask for the sale. You can't get to know them a little better. You can't get a feel for them. Some of you won't care if you get a feel for them or not, but some of you want to know your renter a little better. You want to get a feel for them. You shouldn't make screening decisions based on that, but you need to stick to the facts on that. But you still want to. They're going to be in your home, and you want that interaction with them. If nothing else, you can start your retention building process. So there is that downside. There's plenty of opportunity to get to know them after the fact too, if they decide to put an application in and so forth. But one thing you may want to check with is your insurance company and make sure that if something did happen in this type of scenario and you were running this type of process, that it's not going to mess with you, that you're not going to have a claim denied or anything along those lines because of a self-entry tour. I've never heard of that, but that pops in my head as well as I kind of think about this process. Okay, the rental application packet. So for me, there is a standard rental application packet that I put together that is I use it for every single person that shows up for a property tour, and there's some reasons that I do this. For me, it is the rental screening criteria. It is the actual rental application. It is something that I call the security deposit policy, and that you may or may not even be able to use depending on your state and what the laws are. And then the last thing is the property flyer. That property flyer, we talked about the property flyer. The reasons I like using it for screening is because then I can show that I've given the same information out to everybody that's come, that I'm not changing the price based on a protected class. I'm not changing the terms, that they're getting the same information as everybody else is getting, and there's no misunderstandings. If nothing else, so when perhaps I've had it before where somebody said, well, you told me that it was $1,200 and now you're saying it's $1,500. No, if there was a misunderstanding earlier, I apologize, but the property flyer that I gave you clearly states it was $1,500. If that's not going to work for you, I understand, but that's where I'm stuck at. I'm not going to reduce the rent to $1,200. So I mean, that's another way to kind of eliminate one of those objections as well. All of this is really designed to again, give that consistent information, but set up the screening process for you. Your screening criteria, which we'll really dive into when we get into the application process, but it sets up all your terms. It's going to tell this person exactly what you're going to look for, and it is going to tell them if you do not meet this criteria, I'm going to deny your application. And so if they decide to apply anyway, knowing that they're in a bankruptcy, and you run a credit check and they're in a bankruptcy, and they're like, well, but I didn't know that you're going to deny me based on a bankruptcy. I want my application fee back. Nope. There's the screening criteria. It's clear as day. You signed it. I'm sorry. You're denied, and I'm not going to return your application fee. Rental application, of course, is what we're going to use to collect all that information so that we can verify it to make sure that they do meet our screening criteria. And then we use some other tools too on the screening process to make sure that we're following the same process. The security deposit policy, we'll get into in a minute how I use that. And then the property flyer, we just talked about that as well. If you are using an online rental application or you want them to apply online, it's easy. Just put the rental application link right on a property flyer, or set it up to where you text them a link to the application right there while they're at the property. Saying, hey, my application's online. Here's my screening criteria. Here's my deposit policy. Here's my property flyer, and you can put those other things online as well. If you're interested, here, let me send you a link. Let's start filling that out right now. Hey, here's a tablet even. Here's the link. Let's just fill this out right now. If you don't like using paper. Let's see here. Yeah. We're going to touch on each one of these components here real quick. Again, the screening criteria, like we talked about, is actually going to define all the terms and criteria that this application is going to be evaluated on. And what this does is it makes it really simple. If this applicant meets all of this criteria, and you can check yes to every single box, they're approved. If they don't, they're denied. It's simple. There's no arguments. There's no, you did this because I'm a single mother. There's no, you did this because you just didn't want somebody of this ethnic background in your home. Nope. It's because you did not meet my criteria here, here, and here. You saw my criteria, you signed and agreed to it as part of the application packet. You didn't meet the criteria, although you were very well aware of it, and I'm sorry the application is denied. It makes it extremely simple to approve and deny applications, and there's really no argument. If they file any type of discrimination complaint afterwards, here's their file, have fun, you know? So extremely important in my opinion, and as we get into this, I also have this signed along with the application itself. Rental application, again, this is the document that's going to be used to capture all the information you need to actually screen the person. You're going to want one for each adult that's going to be on the lease. And then, you know, each application too should somewhere, usually at the, you know, this is a 2-page application, but usually at the second page or some sort of release saying that they give you permission to run background and credit and criminal and call your landlords and verify your income and all that stuff. But the application is what's actually going to capture all of that information that you are going to verify to make sure they meet all the criteria that is listed on your screening criteria. The security deposit policy. So I loved using this. Not everywhere can use something like this, but check your laws, and if you can use it, it's great. So what I would run into, and this was more kind of a carryover from the property management company as a property, you know, managing property as a property manager for other people, is what would happen is we would require as part of our criteria, in order for us to screen an application, we would say, okay, each adult has to have a signed, completed application packet. You have to pay the application fee, and we need a half month's rent deposit or a full month's rent deposit to hold the unit while we're doing the screening process. And so we would do that, and then when they were approved, well, if they were denied, we'd send them the denial letter. We would let them know that they're denied, and we'd give them back their deposit. You can't keep their deposit if they're denied. But if they were approved, we would send them the approval letter, and then we would start prepping for their move-in whenever their chosen move-in date is. So what we started running into is that some people, it would go 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, and then they would decide they didn't want to move in, which is fine. But the problem is now we've taken this property off of the market for 3 to 4 weeks. And remember, I was working for another client. So now they are down another month worth of rent and income for their rental property. And this person wants their deposit back. I'm not going to do that. There's damages now. You have kept this off the rental market, and I could have had this rented to somebody else who could have been paying rent, and so on. So we put together this security deposit policy. It's basically saying that we're going to take this off the market, and if your application is approved, you have the right to cancel within 72 hours. But if after that 72-hour mark you cancel, that you have now caused damages, and you know we like to damages because security deposits were to cover damages, to the ability to collect rent and have this thing leased to somebody else. So we are going to hold your security deposit, and we had it in writing, and we had them sign it. It eliminated, almost completely eliminated this issue altogether. There were instances where we did have to hold the deposit. This came up. But when people saw this, the ones that weren't, because a lot of times they weren't 100% sure in the first place. And so they would really think twice about moving forward. And the ones that did do this, you knew they were serious. Now, having said that, sometimes things happen. If something happened, it was outside the 72-hour period, and it was day 5 or day 6, and something popped up, something happened, lost a job, somebody passed, or whatever, life happens. We were never difficult about reasonable things in a reasonable period of time. Being difficult, just to be difficult, is how you get yourself in trouble, reputation-wise, complaint-wise, all of that stuff. Because then the complaints come, then they start making stuff up or exaggerate things, and they want their money back, because you didn't do this, or you didn't tell them this, or whatever the case. One, it's just good customer service. 2, if a property owner is really going to bust my chops, over, returning a deposit because somebody's husband died, and I'm getting extreme there. That's not the type of property owner I wanted to work for anyway. But so we're reasonable. We gave them the deposit back, But what we didn't do is, if 3 weeks passed, if somebody came through, we kept that deposit and we looked out for the best interests of our client, and then we moved them on. So that was the whole point of the security deposit policy. You may not be able to do that in your jurisdiction, so please check that out before you implement something like this. Property flyer, we talked about the property flyer. We talked about the reasons why I do the property flyer. It's, again, to give consistent information out to everybody, but it's also so that they have something that if they don't put that application in right then and there, they have something to kind of go back on. I'm like, okay, yeah, look at this, and maybe the link to the online listing there, but it's just something that's in their hand, that's in front of their face, to keep them considering this property. And usually I would follow up the next day and say, hey, listen, I just wanted to follow up from our tour yesterday. I really enjoyed meeting you. Again, I still think this is going to be a great property for you. I would love for you to fill out an application. Would you like me to meet you over there? Here's a link to the application. Let's get moving on this. This is the home for you. But the property flyer at least kept it first and foremost in their mind, and it also solved the other problem, making sure that all the information I gave to everybody that toured that property was consistent across the board. So all of that stuff is in my rental application packet. And again, it makes the screening process extremely effective and extremely easy to make decisions on, and very cut and dry. It kind of keeps you out of the weeds. It really does. So that's it. That is kind of the property tour, the Leasing for Landlords part of this. Again, we're right on time, about an hour. I like to keep these things 40 minutes to an hour or so. We're just passing that hour mark. So let's just recap this lesson here real quick. Again, we talked about those leasing inquiries. We talked about what the goal of scheduling is, or those leasing inquiries, which is to schedule a property tour. We looked at different tools like the traffic log and some of the ways we can document some of that stuff to keep us, give us a good tool to follow, but also keep us kind of out of fair housing trouble and doing some pre-screening along the way. We talked about some different ways we can conduct property tours, some of the pros and cons of each, and how we can kind of utilize them based on the situation. And then we took a quick look at that rental application packet, which is going to set us up perfectly as we move into the screening process of the management cycle. Okay, so resources that we talked about that are going to be available to you. So first and foremost, all of this stuff and more, 350 plus forms are in the Landlord Launches Form Vault, which if you are watching this as part of the Landlord Launch program, you should have access to. But I have also included them as well below this lesson so that you have a quicker direct link to the stuff that we talked about. That way you don't have to go digging around in a forms vault. Here we're going to include in sample traffic log. Again, this stuff's downloadable. It's meant for you to adjust and make your own. Most everything is in a Word doc here. The screening criteria, the rental application, the sample rental application, which for the most part, a rental application is a rental application. Yeah, you could probably ask a different question here and there, but really all these applications are gathering the same amount of information. That security deposit policy, if you want to do some research and see if you can do something with that, if you even want to include something, that's completely up to you. The sample property flyer, and again, there's all kinds of samples out there. You can go to Word, you can go online, you can go to Canva, there's all kinds of places where you can find and create sample property or property flyers for your property. I really enjoy them. I think they're a great tool for a lot of different reasons, for the marketing and for the leasing side. So highly recommend you implement and develop one. And once you do it once, you can reuse that thing every time it comes vacant. It's a great tool to have. And I'm also going to include some links to some video property tours. Some of them are going to be good. I found a good one that's going to be on here that he goes through and he explains exactly how he does the camera and how he takes his shots and everything else. So I thought that was cool. And I'm a big fan of not reinventing the wheel. I mean, if somebody has done it great, I'm going to send you their direction. I'm going to have you take a look at what they're doing, and they're getting the information to you in a very good kind of way. Some of this stuff, if I don't have a different spin on it, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. But I'm also going to include some real property tours that I kind of found just as I was digging around on YouTube. Some of them may not be so great, but it may show you what you don't like and what you should not be doing. I mean, if you're walking around a property and that camera's shaking all over the place and it's making you sick, guess what? You should probably figure out a way not to do that so you don't make your potential applicants sick either. So you will have the links for that as well. Now that wraps us up for the Leasing for Landlords part of the Landlord Launch work here. We are going to be jumping into next the screening for success, and we are going to take a deep dive into the screening criteria. We're going to go section by section. We're going to talk about just every component of that, things you can do, things you don't want to do, things you should do, different ways you can look at things. By the time you're done with that, you're going to have a solid screening criteria. We're going to talk about the screening process, all the steps you can take, and you have verification forms. I mean, by the time you are done with the next section, you are going to be able to 100% screen anyone that applies for your home. And if you have already gone through the marketing side of things and have all that set up, you should be getting all kinds of inquiries by now, and scheduling tours and leasing like a mad person. So I hope this has been helpful. Of course, join us for our weekly Q&A, regardless of where you're at in the program. Join us for our weekly Q&A. If you have questions, great, let's talk about them. If you have problems, great, let's work through them. If you don't have anything, join us anyway. See what other people are asking. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and I learn more from listening to other people's questions than I do anywhere else. So jump on, listen in. If you can't come live, go watch the replay. I record those and I post those as well in the community, and very helpful. So thank you once again. We'll go on and wrap this up, and we will see you next time.